Alright, once you've got your camera connected to your host computer and the DSLR camera remote server software running, it's time to go ahead and start the client application on your iPhone or your iPod Touch. From your home screen, click on the DSLR remote icon. This will launch DSLR camera remote. The first thing you'll see is a list of available camera servers. In most situations, you'll just see your server. Go ahead and click on it. It'll be the name of the computer that you have the server software installed on. So it might be something like your name's computer or something like that. When you select the server, it'll connect to it and will show you all the information about your camera, and if there's images in your shooting folder, you'll see the last image you took. Let's go ahead and talk about the user interface a little bit first. Up here at the top, you'll see the name of the file. You'll see its index number, basically how many out of how many shots you've taken. Again, this is my last picture, so this is image 133 out of 133. It'll then display the shutter speed and the aperture that was used to photograph the image. And you'll see a preview right here. Down below that, you'll see an LCD panel that looks a lot like the panel on the top of your camera. It's going to have 6 buttons at the top, which are the options that you can control based on your camera mode. I'm shooting in manual right now, and you can tell that by looking right here where it says Exposure Mode M for Manual. That means I can control my shutter speed and my aperture. If I have my camera in an automatic mode, I may only be able to access one or none of these 2 shutter speed or aperture options, depending on which automatic mode I'm using. Also at the bottom, you'll see my focus mode. In this case, I'm set to manual focus, but it'll tell me what autofocus mode I'm using if my camera's in autofocus. Here I'm going to switch it over to AF for a moment. There you go. Now you can see how I'm shooting in one-shot autofocus. Let me put it back to manual. To adjust a camera setting, just click on the button that represents that option. So if I want to change my shutter speed, I just click on the shutter speed button, and it'll bring up a list of all the different shutter speeds that are available on my camera. And you just scroll up and down with your finger and pick the one that you want to use. I'm going to go for a 15th of a second in here. Adjusting all of the other options work the same way. So if I want to change my aperture, I click on aperture, and again, I'll get a list of the available options for my camera lens. To the right of that is the ISO, or the sensitivity to light. I can bring that up and I can scroll through the list of all the different sensitivity options for my camera. In the bottom left is the white balance option. If I press on that, it'll bring up a list of the different white balance options. In the center is the quality option. And when I click on that, it'll give me a list of all the different quality options, either JPEG on its own, or RAW on its own, or RAW plus JPEG. And I can pick any combination that my camera allows. I'm just going to shoot large JPEGs today. And in the bottom right-hand corner is going to be the exposure compensation. Now, because I'm shooting in manual right now, this option is disabled. But if I was to put my camera in an automatic mode, like aperture priority, you'll see how the shutter speed disappears because I can't adjust that in aperture priority. It's set automatically. And the exposure compensation turns on, where I can turn it up or turn it down if I want to. I'm just going to put it back to manual here. There we go. Then to take a picture, all I do is press the fire button. There we go. And then a second later, we'll see the image that we just photographed. At the bottom, you'll see the shots remaining indicator. This will tell you the number of shots you have left on your memory card if you're shooting to the camera and to your computer. If you're only shooting to the computer, you'll actually see the amount of hard drive space that's left. We'll show you how to adjust that here in just a second. You can control other options by clicking on the Options button here on the left-hand side. When I press that, it'll bring up the Options sheet. From here, I can control the intervalometer, auto bracketing, burst mode, where pictures are saved to, and live preview. Now, depending on your camera, you may not see all of these options in here. Let's start off and talk about that Save To option. If I click on Save To with a Canon camera, I can choose either the computer and the camera memory card, or I can choose the option just to save to the computer. If I'm shooting with Nikon, you won't see this option. It always saves to the computer only. You note when I change over to the computer, it tells me the amount of hard drive space I have left rather than the number of shots remaining. Let's take a look at a couple of the other options. We're going to go ahead and talk about the intervalometer and the auto bracketing in separate movies, but let's talk about burst mode. Burst mode is going to vary depending on the camera that you have. If you're shooting with a newer model Canon camera, like a 5D Mark II, a T1i, or a 50D, you'll have the burst mode option. All you do is turn it on and press the done button. Then, when you actually take pictures, by holding down the fire button, it'll shoot a series of pictures as quickly as the camera can take them. And you'll see those images will come back very quickly. If you're shooting with a Nikon camera, you'll have an additional slider which allows you to pick the number of images in your burst, and that'll be limited by the buffer size of your camera. And every time you press the fire button, it'll take that number of pictures. The next option we want to talk about is live preview. If you have a newer Canon or Nikon camera, you can take advantage of the live preview. This actually lets you see what the camera's seeing in real time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enable live preview and press the done button to turn it on. And you'll actually be able to see a live video feed from your camera's sensor, just like you were looking through the viewfinder. And you can still press the fire button and take pictures during this video just like you normally would. So I'm just going to wait for the good shot to come up, and we'll take a picture. Oh, there we go. And it'll return to live video in just a moment after the shot's taken. I'm going to go ahead and let's bring up those options again. And we're going to talk about the different autofocus modes that you can select during live view. Depending on if your camera is set to autofocus or manual focus, and depending on your camera model, will depend on what options you have. Today I'm shooting with the Canon 5D Mark II, so I actually have 3 different autofocus options in live preview. I can use the quick mode, where we'll actually drop the camera's mirror, focus, raise the camera's mirror, and then take the picture. There's also live mode, where it'll actually do a contrast detection autofocus, or live face mode, where it does the same auto contrast detection, but tries to look for a face at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set it to the live mode, and I'll show you how to autofocus in live view. There we go. So we can see the video now. All I do is I just tap on the preview window, and it will refocus the camera based on whatever autofocus point I have selected on the camera hardware. And it'll take a few seconds for contrast detection autofocus usually to work. There we go. And again, all you do is you just tap anywhere on the screen. It'll cause an autofocus cycle to happen, and it will focus. Now again, it takes a couple of seconds. Alright, let's talk a little bit about reviewing your images. Once you've taken an image, you can slide through the images, moving left or right, to look at different images just by using your finger. If you want to zoom in, just double click on the area that you want to zoom in on. So I'm just going to double click on our subject's face here, and you can see how it's going to zoom in very close. There we go. And then double tap to zoom out, and you can double click to view a different spot as well. If you want to see a larger preview and you're working in a portrait mode, you can swipe your finger down, which will minimize the LCD and gives you a larger preview area. Now when I double click, I'll see a larger region of the image. To get the LCD panel up, just swipe your finger back up, and that'll bring the controls back up. You can also rotate the phone to give you a larger landscape view. And you can still use live view and take pictures in this mode, but it also gives you a larger area to zoom in on your subject as well. Here, let's show you what live view looks like in horizontal mode. I'm just going to select live preview, turn it on here. There we go. Just like working in the horizontal view. And again, to take a picture, just tap the fire button. Alright, that should give you a good run-through on the most basic uses of DSLR camera remote. Watch the other videos to learn how to use the intervalometer or the auto bracketing feature.